Inside of the concentration camps established by the Third Reich, there were many despicable guards and members of staff who inflicted such suffering onto prisoners. After the Second World War, a number of these were brought to trial, and their evil shocked the world when witnesses would testify of their crimes. One of the most shocking liberations came when the British Army liberated Bergen-Belsen. This camp in particular was in a dire state, with thousands of dead bodies lying all around the prison, and inside were thousands of dying and deceased prisoners. The prisoners at Belsen had hardly any care, food or water, and the British had to deal with the clean-up. They had to bury 10,000 corpses, but found amongst the starving prisoners were a number of SS guards and members of staff who remained at the camp. These were forced into the clean-up operation, and one of these was Irene Haschke. She was only roughly 24 when she was brought to trial, but what did she do inside of the camps? Irene Haschke was born on the 16th of February 1921 and worked inside of a textile factory up until the August of 1944. What makes her case strange is that up until the end of the Second World War, she'd not really seen much action inside of the concentration camps, but in the final months, as labour shortages inside of the camps led to subscription, Haschke was forced into the SS. She was sent to Gross-Rosen, and inside of here, over 125,000 people would pass through the barbed wire fences and the subcamps, and over 40,000 were killed inside due to the horrific conditions. Haschke claimed that she was here for just one day before she was then sent to Langenbielau, where she underwent a period of 5 weeks training to become an Ausführerin, or female guard. Following her training, she then went to work at a labour camp in Weißwasser for 3 weeks in Sudetenland. But at some point, she then went back to work back inside of the textile factory. But then as the war was going very wrong for the Germans, she was called to go and work at Bergen-Belsen. On the 28th of February 1945, she arrived there. During her first 3 days inside of the camp, she claimed that she did nothing and was then placed on camp duties, carrying out inspections and generally keeping the prisoners in check. At this time, the conditions in Belsen were horrific, and typhus was causing thousands of deaths each month, to the point where people were being left to die anywhere. The epidemic was not managed by the Germans, and the camp became much more crowded as other camps evacuated from the front lines. Dozens of thousands of prisoners came to Belsen, and this added further strain on food supplies, water supplies, and facilities such as toilets and basic sanitation. But after this brief stay looking after camp duties, Haschke was moved into working in the wood commando for 8 days, where she would force prisoners to cut wood. The staff inside of this were very notorious for their poor treatment of the prisoners and would regularly threaten them and beat them if they did not do enough work. After this, she worked inside of the kitchens, but her role in Belsen at trial uncovered a rather brutal side to her. One witness, named Rosenweger, came forward and testified that they had seen Irene Haschke push a woman into a water cistern and that the woman was so weak she could not get out. It was claimed that this woman then drowned and died, and Haschke then picked this woman up and threw her in. She denied this, but then further accusations of cruelty emerged. Another witness, Stein, said how when Haschke was working inside of the cookhouse, she would be very awful to prisoners. Whenever a prisoner under her control was given a few drops of soup, it was said she knocked it out of their hands and poured it on the ground. She would also hit workers and prisoners with a rubber tube or truncheon that she carried to instill her reign of terror. At trial, she did claim that she had hit prisoners before. She said, when asked, "Have you ever hit anyone?" "Yes, because they took the food of others away. I hit them with my hand, and sometimes I used a stick which I got from the guard. It was an ordinary wooden stick, 18 inches long and 3/4 of an inch in diameter. It was necessary to beat prisoners when they were stealing, and I only hit them once or twice." She also faced accusations that she beat prisoners to death on occasion. But one of the most shocking things that emerged from her testimony was that she did not deny the conditions of Belsen. She admitted she was horrified by the conditions of Belsen and that it was normal to beat prisoners who were trying to take food from the cookhouse. She claimed also that she did not know that so many dead bodies were lying around the camp. Irene Haschke also would admit that she beat prisoners in front of the door of the cookhouse to send a message to others, and that many different guards also repeated the same sort of behaviour. After the Second World War, those members of staff in the SS who were caught at Bergen-Belsen were brought to trial by the British. The Belsen trials took place, and during this infamous guards such as Irma Grazer and Josef Kramer were sentenced to death and were then executed by the British executioner Albert Pierrepoint. At her trial, the accusations came out about Irene Haschke, but there was no denying that she had been violent towards those who were suffering, and that she had gone out of her way to make people's lives a misery at Belsen. Up until the end of the conflict, it's unlikely she would have been accused of crimes against humanity, as she only worked at Belsen for what seems like a matter of weeks before its liberation, but it was clear that she was a brutal guard who would inflict suffering in the cookhouse, and her actions in preventing people getting food, as they were so desperate, no doubt had a role in people's deaths and health. For her crimes, Irene Haschke was sentenced to a period of 10 years imprisonment. But as she had been held for a number of months, she was released early. She was released on the 21st of December 1951 and only served 5 years in prison. Considering the fact her actions must have contributed to the conditions of Belsen, it's believed that Irene Haschke, a brutal guard, got off rather lightly at the Belsen trials. The evidence against her was not as concrete as other guards, and as she hadn't worked at Auschwitz too, this also helped her case for a prison sentence. Little is known about her life after the trial, and she seems to have disappeared also from the history books. It's not known when or if she passed away, leading to the possibility that today Irene Haschke is alive at the grand age of 101. But what cannot be disputed is the state of Bergen-Belsen that was uncovered by the British at the end of the Second World War. The camp had become too crowded, but it was inside here where Anne Frank and her sister passed away from the diseases that were rampant there. What is bizarre that, despite being given the opportunity by the SS to escape, Irene Haschke and other members of staff stayed to maintain order there. But worryingly today, there are many members of staff at camps such as Belsen, Auschwitz or Ravensbrück who were never brought to justice and never had their day in court in front of a judge. Still today, a few war crime trials are happening inside of the German courts, but little is known of Irene Haschke today. Thank you for watching, and support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.